Hey everyone, welcome to Book of Katherine, and it is 4 a.m. in the morning, but I can't sleep because I have watched a very, very disturbing interview with Chris Chappell and a woman who escaped North Korea into China where it was worse. But it was pretty bad in North Korea as it was. And what really disturbed me is finding out, as she told us about North Korea, how similar it is to the United States. Let's talk about what we didn't know. We know about things with Agenda 21 and things they're changing on the local government level, like things that the UN has been changing, things about changing it from democracy and moving it by paying off officials and moving things in like housing, taking away single family homes, turning into like micro housing and things like high-speed trains and closing off our huge lands and making it into mega cities. We know about that, right? There are other things that are happening that are coming together. She answered some big questions for me. For example, on Insider Movies, one of the reasons I started Insider Movies is because there are great movies and they don't make great movies anymore, right? So I've been making Insider Movies for about a year now, and one of the things that I've noticed as we've been making these Insider Movies is that love stories are gone. And we just watched Leap of Faith. And as I was watching it with my group tonight, we had started it on Sunday, and we were finishing it up tonight, and there is a love scene. And it's not like, a big mushy love scene or anything, but he just reaches down. There are these monarch butterflies that fly up. That's why I'm dressed up like this tonight. I wanted to dress up because we used to dress up like this. I got this in a vintage store, and I was like, I'll never be able to wear it. Look at the shoulder pads. But we used to dress up like this. I've seen this in some 80s movies that women and men used to dress up, get this dressed up, and they go out on a date night together. And we don't do that anymore. We used to get a babysitter. We used to leave our kids at home, and we'd go out and we'd go on a date night together and we'd take care of one another. And like now, all we do is fight with each other if we get married at all. And I want to talk to you about why that is. This girl escaped. So anyway, in Insider Movies, I talk about how they don't make love stories anymore. It's like love has been banned or something. And, in this movie, they go out into this field, and he claps his hand and these monarch butterflies come flying up and they land all over, like just a few land on each of them. And it's this beautiful just love scene where he just says, I'd like to make you some promises someday. And she's like, you've only known me for 3 days. And it's Deborah Winger and it's Liam Neeson. And I love both of them. And it is a wonderful love scene. And it just makes you feel this thing. And I hadn't felt that thing in a really long time. Like I couldn't remember the last time I felt that watching a movie. And he reaches down and he just strokes her face with the back of his hand. Now my love does that with me. Like I'm really lucky. Like I'm really lucky on the whole, like, affection side of things. I have a incredibly great, but that's what I mean is like you learn each other, and so we've grown in that way. Does that make sense? So we have that, we have that, but you don't see it on the screen ever. And I was commenting on that. I was like, oh my gosh, like when's the last time we've seen that? They don't do that anymore. They always make movies about breaking up and all these tragic love stories and blue love and all these things. And it's always, they always end up like can't be together or not being apart. And this movie ends, not, if you haven't seen the movie yet, sorry, spoiler alert, just hit pause for a little bit. No, I mean, just listen. The movie ends with them choosing to be together, which is not normal, like not the way that, I can't believe I said it, which is not normal. No, I can't believe I said that. That's how much they've programmed us. Gosh, now I sound like Kanye West. So, and then here comes this girl from North Korea saying that what woke her up was that she was in North Korea and someone smuggled in a movie of Titanic. and she didn't know there could be a movie with a love story. And I was like, she almost verbatim said the words that I had just said to my group like an hour earlier that night. And it like just freaked me out that a girl from North Korea is saying that about her life in North Korea. And then she continued on. And all these things, I was just like, like, things that I just thought they were changing in our culture. I was seeing the reasons why they're changing in our culture and the purpose behind them. Like, they're slowly changing them. Like, when China goes into Hollywood and says, you can't make this movie for our market, you can't make this movie for our market. North Korea is socialist, but so is China. And when they say you can't make a movie for our market, they're changing our market too. They're changing our culture to be socialist. They said they're waging a culture war on us. They're waging a culture war to turn America socialist. They're waging a culture war to make us like North Korea. And then she said when she got to China, China was worse than North Korea, which I haven't gotten to. So anyway, I thought through it and I was like, why would they want, one was the love story. And I was trying to think through why they would want them to not have a love story. Like, why wouldn't they want to have a love story? And she said, well, we were supposed to worship Kim Jong-un like a god. And I realized, that threatens, and I realized he's supposed to be the dad. And then I realized here, they want the state to be the dad. We've heard Dinesh D'Souza talk about that. We've heard Ben Shapiro talk about that. We've heard a lot of people, we've heard a lot. We've heard Candace Owens talk about that. We've heard a lot. Dave Rubin talks about that. We've heard, Larry Elder talks about that. There's so many people, and I think the first one to talk about was actually Ann Coulter talked about. There's a lot of people that on the left and the right that have talked about it. And that the democratic system, they want. And I mentioned this to you. I said that I've had a friend, and now I have more, now that I talked about it on my videos, I've had more mention it to me, that when they had to go on to government assistance, the government assistance people directed them to break up with their husbands. They said, move out of the home with your husbands. They said, break up with your husband, get a different address, you guys need to break up. Like, our government people are telling them to break up. How is that not like North Korea? How is that not the same thing? And so when we have movies saying love stories have to end badly, doesn't that kind of reinforce the system of welfare? And doesn't that reinforce the 75% of our government, federal government being, federal assistance? That's why they don't want love stories published, because if you have love stories, then they can't churn out the 75% of the federal budget being government assistance. In order for that to be government assistance, in order for all that tax money to go to the 1% and just constantly be consumed, people have to be single and dependent upon the state. And love stories break that up. And I was like, holy cow. And that girl helped me figure that out, because she was telling me about Kim Jong-un and the way they're supposed to worship him. And I was like, so what's the similarity over here? And I was like, oh, there is. Good God. And then, two, she said that that's all propaganda. Before Titanic, she saw Titanic, all the media is propaganda. It's propaganda. And all the propaganda is that there are enemies out to get us. It's constantly enemies. And there's always an enemy. An enemy is out to get us. An enemy is out to get us. And I was like, that's really interesting, because that sounds familiar. That sounds like what we're always hearing. We always have an enemy. We're always hearing that Trump is out to get us. Trump's out to get us. Trump's out to get us. That's all we ever hear is Trump's out to get us. Trump's out to get us. And we don't just hear that. We hear that Christians are out to get us. And we hear that Republicans are out to get us. I just was reading Bernie Sanders' tweets and then Senator Warren's tweets. And they give no evidence whatever, but they're always saying they're out to get us. That's literally what they say. And if you read other people's tweets, conservative tweets, They're like saying facts. They're like, the Democrats have done this today, A, B, and C. You know, look what they've done today. That's not what like the left is doing. They're just like, they're out to get us. And like Bernie Sanders, the last tweet I read from him was like, the Republicans are out to get women. Verbatim. They're out to get all women. And I was just like, you know, ask the question how and when. Always ask the question how and when. And they can't answer. How and when? How and when? And that's the propaganda machine. And it shows you that it's just being directed by China, because China really directs North Korea. Like, China's controlling North Korea constantly. Like, that's the whole reason that it's just, there's a lot going on there. But like, you know, so we just have them with the astroturfing. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens if we really start to actually enforce our treason laws, you know, about accepting bribes. And I think it's funny that Senator Warren is actually considering a bid with all the money she's accepted through the Credit Financial Protection Bureau. I'm like, she hasn't even, I was like, that's funny. So I'm like, right. I was like, it pretty much guarantees that Hillary Clinton's going to run now. I was like, oh, great. We're never going to hear a real bit of news again in the next 2 years. I was like, so talk about a media blackout. We are in for one heck of a media blackout now. I was like, oh boy, that's just, it's just like, here, Hillary, Hillary, Hillary. Like, that's all that is. That's like a dog whistle to Hillary Clinton if I ever heard one. So we are in for it. All right. So yeah, I was like, yeah, we always have enemies, don't we? Like, we're always being told people are out to get us, and it's either Trump, Christians, or the GOP, isn't it? They're always out to get us. Always we have enemies. And it's been like that for a while. And she said that we're always told that we need our dear leader to defend us. He's a God. He can do no wrong. And you know what that made me think of? It made me think of that guy in that one Jesse Lee Peterson crowd when they went through this debate with Hillary Clinton versus the Trump guy before the election. And they went through the crowd, and there were Trump people and there were Hillary people in the crowd, right? And there were more Trump people, but there were Hillary people, and the Hillary people were like higher ups. They were definitely more like higher ups, right? So they were like campaign people and lobbyist people, the whole 9 yards. So they knew stuff, and then they had a pretty high up person up on the stage. And so there was a variety. And so Jesse Lee Peterson like gave them the chance to speak their minds, right? And he would ask them serious, tough questions, and he'd let them answer. So you really heard what they thought. But he really put him on the spot because he's really good at, the thing that I do like about him is that he won't let them get around the question. You know, a lot of people today will try and get around the question. You ask them a question and they will try to sidestep it, and he'll just pretend like he didn't hear it and he'll ask the question again. They'll try and sidestep it and he'll just keep asking the question until they actually answer the question. I love that. I love that because we finally get an answer to the question. Like, finally. I'm just like, oh my God, we're getting answers. It's really nice. It's really nice. I just wish more people would do that. It's very, very dogged, and it's very, very refreshing. I love that. And so he gets some real answers from these people. And the result of that is that you get this woman saying, actually, I believe in all of these policies. And yes, Hillary doesn't stand for all of these policies, but I'm voting for her anyway. Then another woman says, yes, my religion says all of these things, but I'm voting for her anyway. And then another person says, yes, my ethics actually say all of these things, but I'm voting for her anyway. And just goes on and on in the room. And so, but Jesse had said, had been asking them, what is Hillary's greatest achievement? And none of them could answer that question. And finally, towards the end of the debate, they get to this guy, and he actually stands up, and he's a Trump supporter, I think, from what he said in his answer. He said, I finally figured it out. I finally figured out what Hillary's greatest achievement is. He's like, you guys just helped me figure it out. And they're like, yeah. And he's like, yeah. Listen to what just happened in this room. Her greatest achievement is getting everyone to go against their beliefs and vote for her anyway. Someone knows that she doesn't have their ethics and she's voting for their anyway. She doesn't have their policies and she's voting for their... Every single person here, Hillary doesn't represent anything that they believe in, and they're voting for her anyway. That is one heck of an achievement, to get people to vote for someone who doesn't actually represent you. That's an achievement. And I was like, that is the equivalent of Kim Jong-un. He can do no wrong. She can do no wrong. When you watch people in Hillary's rallies and at the DNC night, remember how everyone was kind of making fun of them crying? It's a religious experience for them. When you watch her followers, it's a religious experience. When they watch Hillary, it's a religious experience for them. She is their religious leader. She's a religious leader to them. She cannot do any wrong. And now I understand why that is. It is built off of the system of Kim Jong-un. The propaganda is built off of Kim Jong-un's North Korea propaganda system. And that system, I'm figuring out as I'm saying it, that system is designed to make him God and questioned, and he can actually like read your mind and stuff like that. I don't think they went that far. But he is God. And you give up all of your rights for God. There are no religions. It's just him. Well, for the Democratic Party, there are no religions. There are no belief systems. There's just her. I'm with her. Despite everything I believe, despite everything, put aside all that you are, all of your individuality, and follow her. All, check your individuality at the door. It's like a cult. And that's really, and I was like, that's based off of North Korea. And that's our propaganda system. So we're like them in that way. And I was like, holy crap. A hunger state. She's like, we're hungry all the time. I was eating grasshoppers. And I was like, interesting, because the same number of people with full-time jobs are on welfare. And you know why they're on welfare? You know why the Democrats? Because we now know all they had to do was lower taxes and boom, the jobs went right back. We now know all they had to do was renegotiate all the trade deals. We now know how bad the trade deals were. We now even know that the trade deals that we had, they weren't even enforcing. They had certain tariffs already in place in the trade deals, and they didn't even collect. They just took the payoffs. China would slip them, 200K, and so they just wouldn't charge the tariff. They just wouldn't submit the thing, and China would get away with it. And so the manufacturing jobs would just leave, and millions of people, we lost it. We lost billions to China. We lost trillions in NAFTA because China used NAFTA as well. They just sold through Canada. So I bet you anything, Congress isn't going to approve the new USMCA deal. And they represent us, but they're going to represent other countries. You just watch Congress represent other countries. They will represent China. They will represent India. They will represent other countries and not the United States of America, who elected them, who they are supposed to be representing. You just watch the GOP and the Democrats. They will represent someone other than Americans, because we're not in there yelling in their ear. We're not in there funding them. They're taking illegal donations. They're taking all those bribes. They're getting all that funding from them. And they've been taking illegal, foreign money for years. And they should really, it's time for new people, isn't it? So we need to clean that GOP. We really need to, because I'm like, that's the basics of the job. We are the only democracy. I thought that was really interesting what I learned from Dick Morris. Dick Morris repeated a lot of things that I said, which I was really grateful for. There's 2 people who said some things that I said. There were 3. And it was so good to hear some things reverberating online. And I was just like, we're getting stronger. It was so good to hear. But then Dick Morris also said, just to know there were like minds out there with me. And that people were thinking the same things that I was. But then Dick Morris said something I didn't know. And he said, actually, the other democratic countries aren't that democratic. They only vote once a year. And I was like, what? And he's like, and they only vote once for a federal person. They don't vote on a state and local level. And I was like, what? We're the only democracy by a long shot. And I was like, what did we do with Clean the GOP? Like, what have we done? I remember it really shook me. I wasn't aware of what a big thing we did. And I'm like, we got to keep going. Like, it's so much more important now. So much more important. So, the hunger state, yeah, I realized why they want us hungry, why they kept our taxes so high. You know why they do that? Because if unemployment is really, really high, then workers will work for the big companies like Google. Like this happened in California. I remember in California, all those Silicon Valley jobs, they're working for nothing. People are living in dorm room conditions, crap housing. The housing there is crap. They're still living like college students. They don't have houses. They don't own their own homes. They don't live in nice quarters. They're still living on beanbags. You know why? Because no one in Silicon Valley has to pay them a ding. You know why? Because unemployment's so high. So Google doesn't have to pay that much, and Amazon can just hire people like slaves because, you know, people are so grateful to get a job. But if unemployment is low, like I got to go to I was driving home. I got to go driving. I was so happy. I'm not going to go driving very often anymore. But I got to go driving and I saw that there was a job fair and I was like, ooh, I can go. Because I was like, I don't know anyone in the community. And I was like, great way to meet people in the community, right? And I want to do more contract work. Like I do the programming, the HTML. And I was like, this is a great way to get to know people and kind of network because, you know, I love meeting people. And so I just like literally made a U-turn and went and just was like, and they're like, who are you here to meet? I was like, just meet people. And they're like, you're weird. And I was like, oh. Welcome to, yes, I'm weird, right? So I just went and I met people and I actually had a really good time. Like some people didn't want to meet me, but some people were like really, really great. Like really, really, really great. But I remember like one guy, it was pretty bad. All right, I'll have to tell you about that another time. Next time I need to go dressed undercover or something like that. Anyway, I don't know. So I went and it was really, really good, but they were talking about how unemployment's really low. And so they're all fighting for the same people. And I was like, well, then the city council needs to put their leg out. I literally put my leg out, was like, wave your leg out and be like, come here, come get people. Cause that's what city councils used to do. In California, they did that. I remember when a city wasn't doing well, they got a city planner and they were like, get people to come in because they were kind of out and remote. This one city, I didn't live in that city at the time, but they were kind of remote. And so they actually got a city planner and they got people to come in. They were like, woohoo, get people to come in. And it worked. You know, people came in from far and wide or wherever. You get a city planner. Now, the city planners out there, a lot of them are Agenda 21. That's the problem. You got to look for one that isn't Agenda 21. And so you're probably going to have to go old school or whatever, but that's fine. You know, they're probably cheaper, to be honest. And some of them won't be. Those are the good ones, the ones who are worth your time. And yeah, you just get in there and you woo them, and some of them will be tired, and that's okay. You'll just get them to warm up to you, and you be really nice to them, and give them a lot of coffee, and get them to love the job again. And you just get them in there, and then learn what you can from them, even if it's just getting some questions answered or whatever about how to get people into your town. Okay, I'm getting off the thing. Okay, so anyway, you got to get people in, and moving on. So I thought that was really interesting. And the Bible is illegal. Like religion is illegal. And she's like, if you read the Bible, you get executed. And I was like, once again, I was like, interesting that was one of the first things that happened, is that the Bible got kicked out of schools in a place where freedom of religion was allowed. I think that's so interesting that you right now, like they're in schools that are like, oh yeah, you have to wear the hijab in class and all the other kids have to wear their hijab to make the other kids feel well, you know, because that's a religion of state. You know what I mean? And that also treats women like crap. And that also, like, it's, they choose who you marry. You don't get to choose who you marry. You know what I mean? This whole thing, women enslaved and all that stuff. And it's not about a love story, and it's about beating the woman and all this kind of stuff. But man, let me tell you, like, if it's Christianity, like, I remember there were kids in school, like, they had Bibles in their backpack. Do you remember those geeks who used to, sorry, I didn't mean to call you guys geeks. But there were, I apologize, I just was really rude, but there were like geeks in there. All right, there were some cool people too, I guess, but they just carried their Bible in their backpack and they went on their business. You know what I mean? Like, they just went on their business or whatever, and then they met in some teacher's classroom who decided to sponsor them or whatever, and they met, and it would be like the math class in one classroom and the drama class in another, in the speech, like I would meet in the speech team, and I did the speech team in another classroom or whatever, and you knew who each group was meeting, and each person had their meeting or whatever, and all the different groups and other religions had their meetings or whatever, and it was just your club because we had freedom of religion. And I remember when I started teaching school, hearing that they were kicking Christianity out, like banning it completely, to the point where someone can't even kneel down and thank, their own God on a field. Like, it's a personal prayer. You can't show a personal prayer in public. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? And now when I see North Korea, I'm like, I get it now. Like, I get it now. And that's really, really, the state is overreaching. Like, really, that's in a person's individual right. You know what I mean? Like, I get it now. It's not about offending other people. It's about the state having control over the individual. That's really what it's about. They say it's about offending other people, but it's not. It's about the state. It's propaganda. It's propaganda. And so they're just saying the evil Christians are out to get you. They tell you they are, but they're not. They just were kneeling and saying thanks because they were happy. So, God, I'm just suddenly like, oh gosh, if I did glorious, like, I felt thankful. I mean, not to anyone in particular or anything, but I was just feeling grateful. Remember that gratitude video that I did of, like, gratitude is so important because it covers your body. What if gratitude gets outlawed? Do you know what I mean? Like, that feeling of gratitude. Because that's really what they did, is they outlawed gratitude on the field. That's not a good thing. So it's bad. It's not a good thing. It's just the state overreaching. So I find it interesting that the state has a lot of hunger out in North Korea, and then we have that many people on food stamps. The same number of people who have a full-time job are on food stamps. Like, that's a big deal. We're like North Korea that way. So I'm just saying, like, I think it's terrifying how much we are like North Korea. But I'm going to end with the last thing she said, which is, at the very top of it, at the very top, he said, so what is it like in North Korea? And she said, well, it's exactly like George Orwell's 1984. And you guys know how often George Orwell's 1984 has been referenced to describe what's happening in our culture, both in the UK and here at home, all across the West. And she said, that is North Korea. Do you understand what I'm saying? You've heard how bad North Korea is because it's been happening so slowly. I told you they're rolling it out ever so slowly. It's like, it's because they're doing it ever so slowly on very purpose, just like Hillary Knowlton is doing it to women, like making us change the way we dress, the way we cover up, to the point where we will now, we have Nicki Minaj dressing in Sharia garb, and taking payment for it, and actually dressing in the chains of women in a third of the world. The things that the slavery chains of women, Nicki Minaj is dressing in slavery chains on a cover of Elle. A black woman is putting on the slave chains of another race and saying it's beautiful. How sick is that? And it's not even in the Quran. It's one that the Iranian and Saudi Arabian government invented. That's sick. And shame on Elle for participating just for the money And that's Luciferian, which is why I cannot believe the prosperity gospel is around, because it's just like Sharia, you know, anything for money. You know, just like Elle and Vogue and Dolce & Gabbana for making a Sharia line, you know, the most anti-woman thing you can do, you know, and furthering the chains of woman. It's no different that if they had made little cuffs, you know, for the slave ships. Absolutely no different, and been like, here's designer cuffs for the slave ships. Here, we have them in gold. Lock up your slaves. Lock up your slaves. Oh, aren't they sweet? Oh, let's put them on the cover. Oh, and then the bougie people who are free in the West are just like, aren't they so bougie? Because they're rich. That's what you guys are that are doing that, who are saying, oh, it's so cool. That's because you're rich and you're not over there and you're not a slave. You're being sick and disrespectful to the slaves who don't have a choice, who are being whipped and mutilated, who have their private parts cut out at the age of 6 so that they cannot enjoy sex, because sex is shameful to have pleasure as a woman. So they cut out not just the clitoris, they cut out the whole freaking thing. And they say beauty is shameful. And so they cut 99% of Afghanis, Muslim Afghanis, say that women should be covered from here to here, and just barely this much of her eyes should be showing, and she should be stoned. You want to know how women are stoned in Sharia compared to men? Men only get covered up to their waist so they can get out. If the stoning happens, they get out. Not women. Because women are wearing the things that you have in a fashion house, little Dolce & Gabbana. Women are in their entire thing. So when they get buried up to here. And they're in a nice little tomb coffin. They're wearing their hijabs. So they're wrapped up. So they die. They get hit with stones. And I've got video for you to see them. The wailing is excruciating. You sick. This is when I start making things that aren't very family friendly. How bougie can you get? How French aristocrat can you get when you start making luxury goods based on the slave trade chains of a third of the world? When they're, you know they're getting lashings for wearing it wrong. How bougie can you get just for a little bit of cash? And meanwhile, for a little bit of cash, our senators and our congressmen are going to say no. They're going to say, let's keep the new NAFTA, the old NAFTA. Let's keep NAFTA. Because we want to keep losing millions of jobs. We want to get poorer and poorer, so we become more and more like North Korea. So China can keep controlling us. Right now, all of your senators and all of your GOP and all of your DNC senators and congressmen and House and even the ones in your states, they're all on the phone to China. And China's just pulling their strings, even in Hollywood, turning us into North Korea. No love stories, no love. Get rid of Harvey Weinstein because he's the one making American culture movies. He's not the one that says the only good woman on a movie screen is a dead one or a raped one. Those weren't his movies. Remember the women in his movies. They were actually real women. Why do you think he got booted out? They kept the ones that make women either dead on the street or getting sexually assaulted. Those are the ones they kept in. So you should probably call up the people that you elected until the new election. And you should probably say, so you're in, right? USMCA? Because I don't want to be North Korea anymore. I'm so done with it. I want America back, where I can practice my religion freely. I don't want to live underneath blasphemy laws. I don't want to live underneath a budget where 3/4 of it goes to a entire socialist system. I want it going back into my streets, going back into my home and back into my pocket. I don't want it anymore. And I don't want a propaganda media that's bought off anymore. I want you to start funding the FTC again. I want you to start funding all of the government agencies that aren't funded so you can catch up on the corruption. Yeah, like the corruption that we can't get investigated because they don't have the money. We're too busy funding your socialist programs. The patent office is behind. Every single office is behind. Why? We're too busy funding the 1%'s private jets through our socialist welfare programs. It's over. Pass the USMCA and get us the heck out of North Korea culture. Peace out. I love y'all. See you on the other side. Go ahead, check out these videos. If you like this, go ahead and subscribe. Get yourself some vintage. Go get yourself a $3 shirt at a vintage store in your local town. Okay? Buy made in the USA. Don't buy on eBay. If you do, buy on the side that says in USA. And please donate. Please, please donate. It would really, really help out a lot. It would. I love you so much. Bye. Link is in the description box.